No, it's right. I'm just showing it visually for fun. I have another clip here. Yeah, no, there is. All right, we're getting started. I'm just showing a quick clip of a rough cut of something that we just finished for our MOOC, and then we're going to show the University of Florida's little MOOC intro as well. This is from a class that's going to be called History of the Book, which is coming up soon. And if you're interested in history of the book and seeing librarians and archivists talk about books, medieval scrolls, etc., that are here in our collection, it will be launched this fall. We're still working on filming it. Filming is kind of an interesting thing. But without further ado, a proper introduction to the world of MOOCs can be found right here on the University of Florida site. I thought that this would be a good start.
Hi, I'm Kenneth Nunn. I teach criminal law at the University of Florida Levin College of Law. If you're looking for a crash course on American law, well, you've come to the right place. We call it a Global Students Introduction to U.S. Law. A team of 8 experienced professors will deliver a series of lectures for 8 weeks exploring constitutional, comparative, criminal, and contract law. What's self-defense? What's homicide? Can you make a contract without even knowing it? How does law carry on tradition? How does law change over time? How does the U.S. system of law compare to those in Europe and other parts of the world? Thank you. We'll introduce basic concepts and terminology in an accessible format, and we'll give examples from legal systems around the world by highlighting similarities and differences with the United States. This course should be helpful to American students contemplating a legal career and to global students considering further study of the U.S. legal system. 8 different professors, 8 different topics, all for one fascinating subject. This will be your introduction to U.S. law. Don't be late.
So it was a lion.
That was a gator.
It was a gator? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Gators raw. I like Mars.
So welcome. Obviously our topic is on making a MOOC. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kyle Courtney. I'm copyright advisor here at Harvard University, also heavily involved with HarvardX edX. Joining me on this panel today will be Jennifer Wondrasek, who is at the Levin College of Law, University of Florida, and Lauren Turner, who is also at the University of Florida, Levin College of Law. We're going to talk about our experiences dealing with the new monster that is in the room, I think, at all our universities, MOOCs. And just to separate it out briefly and real fast, MOOCs is massively open online courses, which means we're filming these for free. We're not having students that get traditional credits. This is being offered to the world for no cost. We have tens of thousands, occasionally, people that we'll hear more about that sign up for these courses that we are hosting online at our specific universities or campuses. And we are offering this kind of body of knowledge, scholarship, wisdom of the faculty, etc. What's interesting is how libraries have been involved in this. And I always like to talk about this because if you're talking about resources, if you're talking about books, you're talking about case law, you're talking about scrolls, you're talking about anything like that, where are you going to access these databases? Where are you going to access these books? Where are you going to access these resources? More than likely, you're going to the library. So the libraries took a front and center approach, at least in my experience here, with the development of MOOCs. And so there's a lot of talk about, well, will MOOCs save the legal academy? Will it save the university system? I think it's another tool in our wheelhouse. The pros is that we're sitting down and engaging with a new technology with the potential of reaching audiences that we might be unable to reach in our lifetimes, or the students themselves. And I use the word students there very particularly. They're not actually students. We call them participants at edX, but the idea is that they're not seeking credit. They're not subject to FERPA violations or anything like that. But these folks that are taking these classes might not be able to drive to campus to take a class. They might be able to afford a law degree. They might not be able to fly in for a conference. So this gives us the opportunity. Some of the cons may be the facts that I talked about. They're not actually students. They're not actually seeking a credit or accreditation. and that there is a dropout rate that's fairly high with most MOOCs. So we're talking about solving those areas. But those are some of the just initial pros and cons. From my perspective, it's been very exciting working with MOOCs over the last 2 years. So I work specifically with edX. edX was founded by MIT and Harvard to create an online learning platform similar to Coursera, Udacity, and some of the other platforms. What's been nice about it is we've really kind of decided that it won't just be the sciences. And I think that's important. Sciences seem to be the first wave of MOOCs. The second wave seems to be law, humanity, arts, music, multidisciplined. And it's been exciting to work in there. Now, I work in one specific field with them, intellectual property and copyright. So I have a different viewpoint maybe than my co-panelists. They're dealing with some of this stuff. But I wanted to talk about how libraries were involved from the very beginning, at least in my experience. And last year, I actually put together a little chart about this. Well, this year, sorry, not last year, about how much libraries have involved. And I can just go to it real fast. Here we go. I did kind of a bomb survey on the listserv that reached 73 Harvard libraries at once that showed, well, have you guys been working with HarvardX this year? We really had no data regarding that. It was fascinating to me that in areas that I didn't foresee, we're working with these MOOCs to get these materials and access. And I think obviously special collections and archives and such would be interesting, but even tech services, creating metadata for the particular objects that were being filmed. Talking about reference questions that were coming in from students that were taking these classes worldwide. Here and there, we've had some interaction. And this is a completely non-scientific survey. This is an email blast survey, which is full of opinion and merit and other kind of good stuff. But I just wanted to kind of share that, that there's been some great amount of activity, but it's interesting. It's not really part of anyone's job at the libraries, really, right? MOOCs haven't really been written into a lot of jobs at libraries yet, but they're starting to become another program, another reference question, another mode of support. And I think it's an important one because some other side effect of these MOOCs that I thought was very interesting was the fact that librarians were now getting in front of the camera as well. It was less about, it was less about getting the resources and more about getting the expertise. So the librarians had the expertise, then they were capable of being there. And this happened to be one clip. This is from Neuroscience X, which is an edX course, obviously, on neurology and the brain. This is filming in Countway Medical Library. I think a very important part of this is they're filming the professor coming into the library, working with the books. They're filming the archivist who's in charge of these books, and putting him front and center as the expert on this particular area. So that was kind of a surprise to me, the first kind of librarian to be out in front of the camera in a MOOC here at the edX. And what he's doing is visiting one of the small museums inside the library. Well, he'll tell you.
I'm Dominic Hall, curator of the Warren Anatomical Museum at the Francis A. Countway Library of Medicine.
So it's not just a slight introduction, it's actually...
I'm here with Dominic Hall, the curator of the Warren Anatomical
The librarian is actually
so
teaching the session,
how
basically.
this skull came to be in the
And it's not a
possession of
research
Harvard
session, and it's not a library-oriented
Digitizing
topic,
agency.
it's just an area that he happens to have an
Digitizing
expertise in.
buried.
And I think that's an important aspect
Gets in
of
contact
where we
with
should be
his mother sometime
going
in
over the
1866.
next few years. We can get off that now, though. One of the areas that we'll be talking about today, about 3 particular areas, and I think these apply to all MOOCs. It doesn't matter if you're at Udacity or edX or Coursera. We're going to be talking about my stuff with copyright and IP. We're going to be talking a little bit about technology with Jenny, and we're going to be talking about access with Warren. So let's kind of delve into here. The development of a MOOC course is a big task. I have been going through developing my own MOOC, which is coming out soon. Thankfully, if Coursera does something, that means edX has to respond immediately. And Coursera released a Copyright for Librarians class, which put the fire under me to also release one here. But the idea is that this involvement with libraries should start from the very beginning. And one of the earliest areas that we were involved as a library in edX was with copyright and intellectual property. So again, accessing these materials, accessing these articles. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about this. Every person that teaches a class knows that we probably use clips in class. We probably use third-party arts. How do you teach a music class without music? How do you teach an art class without art? How do you teach a law class without cases? It's difficult. So any third-party materials, though, are being used in the classroom, usually subject to that copyright classroom exemption. Face-to-face teaching and the closed environment of the classroom and the closed environment of Blackboard or Twen or any of those areas where we're storing our materials are protected. They're protected both by copyright law and by a pin wall and a password and access at the school. You're a student, you have an ID, you're getting credit. That gets eliminated when you move into the world of MOOCs. Suddenly you are distributing third-party materials, whether they be images, movies, music, etc., online without that face-to-face kind of teaching exception. Even online classes that you pay for and get credits for have the Teach Act to protect them, so you're able to share this materials. But once it becomes a MOOC, it is basically becoming like YouTube. You're distributing materials necessarily without permission. And so there's a big struggle there. And we took about a year to write up an intellectual property policy regarding this use. And we rely, thankfully, at least from the area of third-party materials, heavily on fair use, and specifically on transformative fair use. Now, I could talk about that, and if you want to hit me up after this, I can talk a long time about transformative fair use, but the idea is that we're asking the faculty to make more engaging presentations. And I believe that the law allows us to do that with transformative fair use. The idea that you're using as much as possible to serve your pedagogical purpose. So if you need to recreate a painting in order to talk about the painting, then you should be capable of doing that. We want you to interact with that painting. Maybe you circle it, maybe you're standing in front of it, maybe we're filming you talk about it with another person. The idea is that it has to be the point of the lecture, that material, that music clip. It should be serving some purpose. If it doesn't serve some purpose, if it's a cartoon, say from the New York Times to give the students a mental break, if it has aesthetic value, you're just showing it because it's visually appealing, but is not tied to the lecture, it's not necessary to see that image or hear that music in order to make your point, then we ask that you take that out. And that could be very hard. We've had some folks that have taught 35, 40 years that are experimenting with a MOOC for the first time, and they just want to upload their slides and tape themselves. And they have jokes that go back 35 years that they rely on visual materials to tell those jokes. So we've been trying to at least work with them. This also brings up another area, syllabus ratings. There's no reserves for a MOOC. There's no online Twen. There is no Blackboard. We try not to reproduce in PDF articles. That can get you in trouble. It got Georgia State University sued, and that was an on-ground classroom. It would definitely get us in trouble as well if we start posting articles online for the world to access. 20,000, 30,000 students accessing this without permission. So this led us, between those two problems, to deal a little bit more with public domain materials. So if you really wanted a picture of someone in France playing a violin in front of the Eiffel Tower, and you had one that was copyrighted by the Associated Press, okay, we can't use that one. It's not related to the lecture. However, if we go on to some public domain website or Creative Commons or Wikicommons and we find someone that has released that image to the world, or one that a student has taken and is giving to us, or one the professor has taken and owns the copyright in, then we're allowed to use that. With open access materials, it's important to note that if you really need an article that defines what adverse possession is, you really want an article, maybe there's some open scholarship. So it gives us an opportunity as librarians to talk about alternative sources of materials that may serve the same pedagogical purpose, but be a different article. Now, it's hard to get a faculty member to surrender their syllabus list, which they have created and culled over the years. But they have to do that in order to get their class launched online. They have to comply with the policy. And then there's permission, which is a slippery slope. We do not allow, at least at HarvardX, permission based with fees. We're not paying any fees for any images or any articles or anything like that. We think that's a slippery slope. If we start paying now, we're gonna have to pay a lot more later. If we can rely on transformative use, that's a good reason. If we have a link to an open source document, That's important. However, we have, and I have, asked many publishers, hey, can you give us a chapter for free? Understanding that this will go online for a period of 16 weeks and be accessible to 23,000 people. The experiment has been about 60-40 success rate. I'll let you guess which one the publishers was on that side. But the idea is that at first, 2 years ago, I had questions that came back and said, what's a MOOC? Now I have questions about, okay, how many guaranteed students are going to be in this class? Because the coin of the realm in the future, my friends, is going to be direct channel marketing of these books, articles, and journals to these students. This isn't in a bookstore where they happen to be passing by, or maybe they're going to take a class and buy a textbook. I guarantee these publishers in the first week or two, when 50,000 students sign up, they're going to look at that article and wonder where it's from, or they're going to look at that chapter, and they may click that Amazon link, and they may buy that whole book. In fact, we've had a few that said their sales went up 200 to 300% of a particular reading just because a chapter was on a MOOC for free. So that's some of the issues that I've been dealing with here. The Coursera Chegg pilot program, I leave to my fellow panelists to discuss because I was involved in that. But I'd like to hand it over now to Jennifer to talk about her aspect of it.
So let me tell you a little bit about the Florida MOOC. We have 8 professors, as you have seen in the video, and to get those 8, we actually did an open call for professors. UF's main campus came to us and said, we want to do a law MOOC, do whatever you want with it. So we basically did a survey course based on the topics that the law professors specialize in who volunteered. There was a conscious decision not to include tenure track faculty because we're not sure yet how MOOCs are going to work into the tenure process. Lauren and I were asked to do the research portion of the MOOC. So we did reading citations, we did research plans, and then we did 3 substantive assignments where the students who wanted a certificate with distinction had to pick a subject-specific assignment. So we've really been watching this as it plays out. We are in our very final week as of yesterday. And I just pulled up the numbers this morning. We have 18,334 students signed up for this MOOC. According to our instructional designer, the UF MOOCs that are ongoing right now are averaging 8,000. So we're doing pretty well. We're very happy with the numbers. Going back to what Kyle was talking about with readings really quickly, we were trying to participate in a program called the Coursera Chegg program, where they had a group of publishers that would work with us to pick a book for the course. They'd get limited access to the chapters we wanted to use, and then there would be a link to buy the full book. We were planning on using this all the way up until March of this year, when all of a sudden I got an email saying, oh, that program was discontinued last week. So all of a sudden we had to struggle and bring in other readings. The interesting part, though, is that our students asked for more readings. So they wanted to learn more. And we ended up recommending Law 101, which was the book that we were going to use, and the Burnham Comparative Law book that one of our professors uses in his comparative LLM. And they've been buying those books all across Europe, all across the US. Amazon has had some great sales, let me tell you. So that was our experience with the program for the Coursera Chegg. Don't rely on pilot programs, have a backup plan. So for the technology, we use several different technologies when recording. We used a green screen, which for those of you who remember like Superman flying, that was the green screen, okay? It's extremely interesting getting used to a green screen because you can't see what you're pointing at. They've got a little monitor off to the side to try to get you to line up. So when you're trying to point out, this is the title in a statute, it's a little challenging. it takes a lot longer than you expect. I believe Kyle mentioned the amount of time he figures for his recordings, planned on taking an hour to record every 10 minutes. And the one nice thing is our faculty who experienced this for the first time as they were recording finally understood that those of us who've been teaching online courses really have to spend a lot more time than average preparing for those courses. We also had a mobile video studio at the end, so we were able to record some sessions in the rare book room, out in the courtyard, things like that. Our IT staff was kind enough to help with check-ins with some of our professors. So they just set up webcams and recorded and, hey, how you doing? Let me talk about this question you've been having. So we've been trying to do a lot of check-ins, especially as our faculty are traveling to different countries. The thing that I work with the most is I do a lot of screencasting, both for this MOOC and my online class. I used to use Captivate. Our studios actually asked us to use Camtasia for the MOOC. And I have to say, Camtasia is much more user-friendly than Captivate. So we were actually recording our screens because we're walking the students through how to record, or how to find statutes, how to find case law, things like that. And we'd append our introduction video that we taped while on the green screen saying, hi, I'm Jenny Wondrasik, I'm your research instructor today, to those videos. And Camtasia made it really easy to do, but there are some challenges, particularly if you're not used to it. It's going to take you a long time. So just getting started on that learning curve can be challenging, especially if you're doing it 2 days before your video is due. We had planned to have our videos done a lot farther in advance than we did. We've been planning this for about a year. And we ended up recording some videos the night before they went live. So procrastination, it happens in all law schools. Our technology actually, though, has worked really well for us. I don't think we've had any failures. We've had to retape a few things just based on world events happening, and we're like, maybe we shouldn't talk about a storm or a particular crash, things like that. So, sorry. So just a little bumps and hiccups along the way, but the technology itself has been a fantastic experience for us. And I definitely have a good appreciation for the weathercasters, as Lauren was saying earlier. So I think I'm actually going really quickly, but that's really what I want to say about the technology. Did you want to talk about your experiences as the newbie?
Oh, as Camtasia?
Yeah.
Sure, I can start with that. Yeah, has anybody used Camtasia here? Okay, so you're all experts, and I had never used it before, and it would take me hours and hours and hours and hours because I wanted to script everything and then say everything perfectly in one take and then have it be perfect and publish it. And I thought it would be easy if I could just get my script right, and it was not at all, as those of you who are probably experts already in this. And there were different ways of doing it, and Jenny mentioned, one option might be to take as long as you need to say what you want to say, and then chop it, cut it up, edit it later. And that actually ended up being a lot better than trying to get through it 100% because I just couldn't do it. And it still took hours and hours, and what was left was, 9 minutes total of what was kept from all those hours of me just moving my mouse and speaking over my actions while the student was listening to me and, watching what I was doing on screen. So Camtasia was, I feel like I'm really good at it now, but I hope that I can keep with it and practice. And I would like to, incorporate that to some extent, that sort of format in classes that I would be teaching in the first year curriculum next year. But based on how long it took me to do, I'm not sure how many of those I'll be able to get to. But anyway, moving on to our third sort of topic issue that we were considering and that we faced is access. So obviously the purpose of MOOCs is to offer this free, open access, knowledge sharing with the whole world. So no matter where you are, as long as you have high-speed internet, you can sign up for an account and then take any class that you ever want to take. And that's great, and it works almost everywhere, except there are limitations to it. So the first issue with access is access to the actual platforms. So, you know, we have edX, which is not for profit, and then we have Coursera and Udacity as sort of for-profit corporations in competition with each other. And access to them, for the most part, is the same. The issue comes up with citizens in countries under US sanctions. So most of the time, you know, for most of the world, wherever you are, you'll be able to access all those platforms. But for Iran, for Cuba, for Syria, for the Sudan, you know, those citizens in those countries, and technically, I think, if I understand this correctly, citizens from those countries, even if they're not in those countries. So technically, even if you're in England, but you're an Iranian citizen, this still would apply, if my understanding of that is correct. But you are not allowed to receive, under US sanctions, the benefit of goods or services from the United States companies. So when Coursera launched in 2012, they were under this interpretation that they were offering information, not goods and services, but information. So they didn't really clear anything with the State Department. They just sort of left access open to anyone in the world, regardless of US sanctions. And it wasn't until recently that the State Department stepped in, but I'll explain that in a minute. And when I say that they left access open, what I mean by that is that they didn't purposely block IP access from people in those countries trying to open up accounts with Coursera. And then in January of this year, the State Department stepped in, contacted Coursera, and said, "What are you doing? You offer a service." So the State Department's interpretation of what Coursera offered was a service. So under the goods and services criteria of the US sanctions, Coursera should have been blocking IP addresses from sanctioned countries. And we're not doing that. So immediately Coursera had to put in IP blockages from, you know, citizens in Iran and in Sudan and all those other places, and had to issue a press release and say, you know, we can't allow this to happen anymore, sorry about that. And obviously, bless you, with every rule, there is some exceptions, right? So there are ways around it. I don't need to tell you people about VPNs, right? So it kind of becomes this farce because, great, your IP address is blocked, but chances are people who are going to misuse this are going to download a VPN so that you can end up signing up for Coursera and edX anyway. But the other way to sort of get around that, and what Coursera and edX and Udacity are all doing, is that you can get licenses to operate in these countries anyway. So to get a license in order to provide the service that is being offered, and I will say specifically, the State Department claimed that the reason Coursera and edX were considered corporations providing services were because Coursera offers discussion forums and grading and sort of peer assessment. So that's not just information, right? So it's not just promoting knowledge out there, it's also offering a connection of people and goes beyond a regular information sharing. That's what the State Department claims. I have no, opinion on that. So despite the sanctions, you can get this license. The license is issued from the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and Coursera has, in June of this year, so this month, Coursera finally got a license for Iran. So now Coursera can operate in Iran. edX was on the ball with the license. They ran into trouble, however, recently in March. Not trouble, but, so we have this Office of Assets Control, which is part of the Treasury Department, giving licenses for these educational platforms to offer their services to everyone in the world, regardless of these sanctions. And then the State Department is coming in and interpreting what those licenses cover and don't cover. So, for example, edX was great in the beginning at getting all the licenses in place and getting ducks in a row. They didn't just jump in like Coursera did. They kind of lined everything up. But in March, they were going to start a class called Flight Vehicle Aerodynamics, which was taught by MIT faculty. And it was all ready and had never run into this type of problem before. And the State Department came in and said, that license that you have doesn't cover that class. So even when you have licenses to operate generally, there are certain topics of MOOCs that are still sanctioned. So that was one of them. In Iran this month, when Coursera announced that it was able to offer these MOOCs, they also specifically said that they were still restricting IP access to MOOCs in STEM. So classes that deal with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, not allowed in Iran still. So that is sort of still working each other out. You have these three platforms sort of going through all the motions. That you have this foreign relations State Department angle coming in, trying to control sort of what kind of knowledge and information is shared under the guise of it's not just information, it's these services you're providing. So that's one option. And again, we were approached through Coursera. You didn't have a choice. You were going edX all the way. So it's not like you have, and it's not like if you're involved in a MOOC, you're going to have any say-so one way or another in the platforms that are chosen or in what your students can and cannot see. But it's something to be aware of, that the concept of everybody having access is not necessarily the case. So in addition to access to platforms, the other aspect is access to individual websites. And our challenge with UF Law, as Jenny suggested, our research assignments were embedded within this MOOC. So I think you mentioned the tracks that you can take, but I'll mention them again. So if you are a student in a MOOC course for our class, there are 3 different tracks. You can just watch as many videos or as little videos as you want. All you need to do is just sign up for an account. You take a look at a video, you don't like it, you never have to do it again. So there's the casual learner that just comes in and then gets bored and leaves or doesn't do anything, much less watch the videos. And then there's another track, which is sort of for the semi-serious student, which is a statement of accomplishment. And then there's a third track, a statement of accomplishment with distinction. So those are the students who are going to be given a certificate. They're the more serious students. And as the faculty members involved in the MOOC, you can choose what those students are required to do in order to fall into those categories. So for our MOOC, our research assignments satisfied the requirements for a student who wanted to get a statement of accomplishment with distinction. So they had to complete only one of the 3 assignments, but they had to get overall they also had to do weekly quizzes, weekly discussion forum posts. They also had to respond. Sorry, I have all my information on here. Is it gonna go away? Yes. Okay. I meant to do that, just move it over. Anyway, they had a lot of stuff to do. And one of the things was this research project. And you could choose any one of 3, but what we found out was that students were doing all of them. So that's great. I'm not sure if that was because we were not clear in our instructions or not, but I was happy to see that. And as part of the research assignments, Jenny already mentioned this, we were doing those Camtasia video screens. So we'd give the assignment and then we'd show them using a hypothetical how to get the answer through the screencasting. We offered the weekly assignments on week 4, week 6, and week 7. Week 4 was about free speech, week 6 was criminal law, week 7 was contracts. And Jenny and I had already discussed with each other sort of what kind of databases we were going to choose to have them search to find cases and statutes that would answer the research assignment. And we posted a question to listservs in terms of access, because what databases really are available everywhere, or as many as we can get. And we didn't hear too much negativity from the listservs at all. But our Coursera guru told us that we should be aware of government websites. So fedsys.gov was not going to necessarily be something that we would require students to research in, because we weren't sure, due to certain government filters and firewalls, whether or not students would be able to get access to US government websites or anything, .gov. So we provided a little video of a FedSys research assignment as an example, but we didn't require it part of the research assignment. What we chose was the Legal Information Institute and Google Scholar. Information Institute for statutes and cases, Google Scholar for cases. And for Jenny's week 4 assignments for free speech, no problems with it. We didn't get any feedback in the forums. There weren't any difficulties with either of those 2 websites in completing the research assignment. However, for mine, of course, week 6, criminal law, we started to get feedback in the forums. And it was from a student in India who, actually one in India and one in Germany, I think. Or China, maybe? Probably China. I remember the Indian one, because he's the one, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the Indian student said, or the student in India, said that he was able to access Google Scholar, but instead of getting the articles and the case law buttons that he was seeing that I was getting on my screencasting, he couldn't get case law. So he could access Google Scholar, but he couldn't access this case law database. And no matter which way he tried to, and people answer each other in the forums and they help each other out. So there was a student from Germany that said that when she logged on, her screen didn't show a case law feature either, but there was a link to the bottom right that said Google Scholar in English. And if she had clicked that link, then it brought her to the same screen that I saw. And who's to foresee that? So what we did was respond by creating on the fly another Camtasia video of a Google alternative or a Google Scholar alternative for any student who was trying to find case law but couldn't through Google Scholar. We did another, and this is like the last minute on the fly, night before, and it was of the Public Library of Law. So we did a separate Camtasia video for that. And which was great because, that helps with the MOOC, the ad hocness of it, just, having to create something and do it and release it, and then boom, it's released to 18,000 students like that. Okay, the last thing I was going to say was that we started to receive feedback for the research assignments because, as Jenny said, our last week started yesterday. And I wanted to share, all right, yes. You can now even understand why Camtasia took me so long because I can barely do this. The last sentence, I love the course. I couldn't believe we actually got to research real cases. I'm excited to go back and do some more research in the databases. That to me meant a lot because, that is what this is about. It is something that we take for granted that we have access to all of this all the time. And there is a student out there that not only was so excited to actually be able to research cases. And so that really made it worth it. Let's see. I think the next part we want to do is put you guys on the spot. Jazz it up a little in here. I guess I could throw it out. Should I do questions? You want to do questions? We had an idea of doing group discussion, so we have some questions that we would like you to talk about with your neighbors, but we should, yeah.
Do you have questions for us before we do group discussion?
Before we make you answer questions, please.
So I just have questions that people were talking about, sometimes finding the materials that they assigned were then the students were going out and buying the books. Has anybody done one of those programs where you can partner with Amazon so that you get a percentage of the pay where they pay?
Oh, the Smile, Amazon Smile.
I know, it's Amazon affiliate or something.
Oh.
And then if they click on the link through you, I mean, I don't know how it would work for a university doing that, but it seems like, I was just wondering if people would try to.
We have not. I know we have not. We have not done any partnerships like that yet. However, edX as a whole is trying to make partnerships with large academic textbook publishers like Cengage to get a blanket license to be able to use different textbooks from their, from all of their stuff, sociology, law, etc. But no specific one through Amazon that I'm aware of. I don't know about you guys.
Coursera actually has limitations on what we can do, and that's not one of their partners. However, in the forums I posted, hey, if you're looking at the US site, it's $10 on Amazon for the Kindle, things like that, but we just couldn't do the affiliate information.
I was wondering, for the Florida stuff, how did you end up with Coursera?
UF picked it. They'd already started doing MOOCs, and so Coursera was their big, choice. We actually just last week or the week before heard that Florida is going to be joining a consortium with Michigan and a couple other of the big universities. And they're talking about moving our MOOCs into Unison, is what they're calling it. So we might not be with Coursera much longer.
In terms of the assignments, and giving the certificates, I'm assuming you didn't read like 18,000.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes. No, we didn't do that. Sorry, of our pay grade. No, they are peer reviewed.
Okay.
So they grade each other. And what we do is provide a rubric. And our rubric that we provided was very, very easy. So to encourage high scores. That being said, they still had to find a statute in case that was relevant, but they grade each other. And now that we're in our last week and the submission dates are, the due dates have passed, we're starting to get comments in the forums that say, they didn't like that our rubric didn't account for subjectivity in terms of quality. So some students were given really great answers and they went into depth about how this case was so relevant. And then others, actually, we had a lot of plagiarism accusations of, Wikipedia copy pasting. But, we did that on purpose because we didn't want the rubric to become this subjective thing. So.
Let me jump on that. So one of the big failures I've seen with MOOCs,
Thank you.
every other MOOC, is that there is no kind of enhanced show what you learned through a research paper yet. We have not had that in any MOOC yet, where students, you're doing a survey-like course, students pick a topic, they have a midterm paper, they go out, do independent research, and then send you a paper. That's been done in the Legal Academy for hundreds of years and educational and for thousands, right? Midterm paper, it's classic. That doesn't exist in MOOCs yet. So you're learning this stuff, but then you're not necessarily using it. I like that you guys are actually using it and having a rubric, but how do you grade 18,000 midterm papers, right? And that's why some people are skeptical of MOOC's ability to teach and learn. However, I know that edX is working on an algorithm for grading short essays. And that's, the Terminator, how 9,000 grading your essays as opposed to peer review, which I do in my other class, but peer review has its drawbacks as well. So that we're I would love if every MOOC had a library session that was 20 minutes of free research on this topic, whether or not it's history or art or sociology. Where can I go to find this? That would be fantastic, but we're not there yet. Great question. Any other questions?
With respect to PDFs of articles, I was curious how far you've pressed your transformative fair use.
We did not use transformative fair use for articles because of the shaky state of law regarding e-reserves at all, much less in classroom with paid credits versus a MOOC. We relied only on transformative fair use for in-class lectures. So what the tape of the MOOC is, the video itself. For the syllabus, it was permission-based or linked to an open access or public domain resource. We did not want we didn't feel, the General Counsel's Office didn't feel that we're there yet with the law, at least in regards to the US.
For UF, we're working with a for-profit company, so our rights are even more constricted on what we can use. We did, however, get out some great promotion for our institutional repository. So, you want to know about tax law? Guess who we have in our repository? We have a great tax program.
Yeah.
So that's the way we were getting around it, is we were pointing people towards things like the repository.
And that's very mission-based for libraries anyway, so it's like we're getting a win out of it by pointing to our own open source materials.
Other questions?
You said the university came to you and asked the program, did they provide any help?
They did. We used their recording studio, and they gave us an instructional designer. He's also working on some other MOOCs and other courses, but for this whole year we've had one fantastic guy who I like to refer to him as our cat herder, because with 8 faculty members going different directions, he's really had to rein us in, give us deadlines, things like that, and he's been excellent.
I'll also like to add that Coursera approached the law school. So the 3 librarians that are part of this 8 faculty MOOC, we just sort of bulldozed our way into. I don't think anyone intended for 3 librarians to be on this MOOC, but we did it, and now that we're seeing in the forums that, the research assignments were highlighted, I think maybe there will be hopefully more of a push with that.
Yeah. And on an interesting note, about a month ago, I got a phone call at the reference desk asking for help finding a statute for another MOOC. So they are finally realizing, hey, there are librarians out there. Let me ask them for help for MOOCs. So since we have a huge university, I'm surprised that hasn't happened more often.
Let me show you just real fast the help that we got on our system, because somebody mapped it out for me, which is fantastic, so I don't have to think about it. This is a chart of all the libraries and people that were involved in making history of the book this year, and it launches in the fall. And if you'll note in there, there's a lot going on there. So the support structure for this is key, and the top left part of the chart is all libraries and librarians that are there. So it depends on the size, it depends on where you are and stuff, but libraries are willing to throw in on this, and I guess bulldoze their way as well, which I love that. I think that's a great idea.
Works with other MOOCs, that he's missing out on a great opportunity by not bringing librarians into the MOOCs.
Yeah.
So we saw the light bulb go on, so hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's just another opportunity for libraries to engage in an area where we previously may not have been engaged in at all. Gives you a chance to learn technology, gives you a chance to enhance your teaching, it gives you a chance to, really show the marketability and the skill set that we have to help people around the world. It's really fascinating.
And there's nothing like being able to walk into like a cocktail party and say, yeah, something I created was watched 2,100 times this week. When else are we going to get to say that?
Right, ego boosting alone. That's why the faculty are doing it. All right, now we're going to quiz you. So, I guess because we thought we were going to be at tables.
Yeah.
Your roommates, if you have any roommates or nearby mates, if you could pick one of the 4, and talk a little bit. Have you ever taken a MOOC course? What did you like about it? What you didn't like about it? 2, do your MOOCs have staying power? Will they supplement or replace traditional education or fade away with time? Why or not? What is or should be an individual librarian's role in a MOOC? Does it depend on the topic of the MOOC? And 4, what other library market goals can MOOCs help with? Information literacy, research skills, etc. And we're going to do that for 5 minutes and take the spirit of volunteerism. And we're going to have someone, at least 4 people answer that. So please talk amongst yourselves for a few minutes. And I'm assuming some of you may have taken MOOCs or may have not, so I think that would be interesting. I give you 5 minutes to talk. And if you don't have numbers on your card, you can check those off too. Yeah, she doesn't have this. I have not taken a MOOC course. Wait, did you just spend 4? I see you 3 antisocials. So what?
I know, it's like I said, professionals and
Yeah, there's me. I've not taken I don't work in the library, so spread out to
No, we've still got 5 minutes. What's your job?
Oh, that's good.
So we'll have more time.
Yes,
Why don't I have to see it?
You got, we have to do like
Although I think that
yeah, I mean, I think actually our whole
It's just, you have it in the class.
Oh, we get this ability.
So I can, and the whole site's game.
Andy Stone.
But if they want to see our uniform, they can,
We're doing a little Q&A. So maybe I have to check one two. This is the interactive portion. You have another minute to discuss. I don't know.
and decide who's gonna volunteer.
Now I'm in charge.
Yes, that's true.
What I all
No. I suppose I would grab. Supplementing.
Yeah, I don't think for playground.
The residential aspect, at least for university education. Law school level. Oh, okay. So it depends on advanced stuff. We continue to use things like the Socratic method, case analysis and stuff like that, for which residential university classes are pretty important.
Yes.
like the two that's been one of our sessions. Wheelchairs is a kind of opportunity. You know what I mean? And that there is. That's like a lot of thought about because like the motivation I just received to do it. If we want one of those that was always great.
So,
I wonder is it is that what they're going for? Are they trying to
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was crazy. I didn't even consider that.
by demonstrating there's
All right, we're gonna do this in the spirit of volunteerism. Who would like to stand up and represent their group for question 1? I saw someone get pointed at, but not actually. Okay, here we go.
Have I ever taken a MOOC course? I am auditing one right now.
Okay, excellent.
edX's sabermetrics
Oh, yes.
course. And all I'm doing is auditing it. I
Okay.
am not trying to digest everything that is there. And the reason is time constraints for me. I like it. I can't give you the name of the lecture. You maybe know it.
I forget to.
Okay.
It's just being.
And he's doing a very good job of introducing the topic.
So the pluses are good introduction, good
Yes,
format.
and there's nothing really that I don't like about it, except that I can't keep up with it, you know.
The pace.
And I do think they have, and I go to the second question, they do have staying power. I would do this again, and probably will. When I get, you know, maybe the next time he does it, I would do it and try to participate more. But I've kept up with the lectures and so on, and I'm enjoying it.
That's good.
It fulfills, it says, does it, what's it, supplement?
Yes.
This is kind of a niche interest of mine. It's not I'm not trying to get a degree or.
And we find a lot of it, so edX is a whole chart of adult learners, you guys said that. Adult learners, so they're just trying to get any taste. And then you have some learners that are considering it, which tells them the feedback. I'm going to law school, I thought it would be cool to kind of take this as a pre-course. All right, so number 2, staying power, supplement, fade away. No one, everyone, okay, everyone agree? I know who that is, Anna Laws, please.
We talked about that a little bit, and we kind of think that MOOCs they have some staying power, as you were saying. People enjoy them as a taste or an introduction, maybe as a basic course of something, but as you guys were saying, right now there's no real assessment tool on our end, and because of that, students aren't getting credit for those, and that's a problem. And so they might cool down a little bit, but they're going to be around, I think, for a while. But I don't think they'll replace traditional education.
Please.
Just a comment. We actually had 204 people pay to take our course to verify that they are who they are through a signature track. We also have over 500 foreign attorneys in our class and one U.S. law professor. He keeps posting as anonymous.
Brushing up on the law.
Just FYI, the course administrators can see who you are even if you post anonymously. So be aware of that if you're hiding in a law course.
All right, who wants to stand for number 3? What patriot? Library patriot. No one, okay, so it's weird. How about this group right here? Perfect.
Number 2. Well, you have to have an opinion, right?
Precisely exactly what Lauren and Jenny have done.
Oh, wow, all right. The model, the very model of it. Wow, okay. All right, what other library-oriented goals then can MOOCs help with? I think that's a serious kind of question. We have our own wheelhouse of what we think is, goals of working with teaching students, not just at law schools, but in all schools. What kind of library-oriented goals do you think that MOOCs can aid with? None. It's just a free-for-all.
Well, I liked actually what you said earlier in the presentation, well, towards like at the end of the presentation, that it really is a way to enhance the visibility of the library. I mean, you can bring the library sort of out of the support fabric into much more sort of obvious, important.
Yeah, I think being the voice of, like you guys are, or the person in front of the camera, is a marketing tool that we have not really done super well as the library, especially law libraries in the past. And I think that's one, this thing's based on video technology. It's based on visualization, and students are going to be more likely to identify with that.
I have to admit, our law school has really started looking at what they can do with the 18,000 students. Just yesterday, we had one say, I'm a lawyer in another country. I wish I could go to your school. And then all of a sudden, our comparative LLM professor zoomed in and said, you can.
So it's a form of marketing, yeah.
But I'm sure we're also catching librarians out there. We had an engineer telling us how great they thought it would be. So it's a good promotional tool for us, both as the law schools and as the libraries.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for answering our questions.
Well, the recording comes off at that time.
No, that's true. We have to.
Yeah, that's what you're right.
Catherine's smart.
I'm glad we're not shaking that.
Oh, sorry. Let me get up and out of your way, sir.
I just wanted to make sure everything's working.
Yeah.